States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Buck. Next item is the approval of the agenda for this evening. This is an action item.
I move to approve as submitted.
Board Member Jenkins. Board Member Mayo.
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick.
Yes.
Board Member Reddick.
Yes.
Board Member Story.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck.
Yes.
Chairman Byram.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And of course, we are here this evening concerning the qualifications for the new school superintendent. And I know many of you have spent many hours going over materials from the survey and so forth. We have a large packet of material. I read and read and read, and a lot of very valuable information included. And I recommend that whoever becomes superintendent, that they be given that book immediately, because I think it will enlighten them to many things that are on the minds of administrators, students, employees, teachers, concerned citizens, and so forth. I think it's an excellent overview, very enlightening. And we're here to consider qualifications. I think most of you have received information from the VSBA, which gave us a copy of a guide, possibly, to look at concerning announcing the superintendent search. And at this time, we might move to that and discuss some of the issues that are there, or if you have any issues with some of the items. I think this is just a template, and we can change it in any way we would like. We need to think a lot about whether an item should be required, preferred, or optional. You know, some items could be required, some could be preferred, and some could be optional. So at this time, looking at that document, any things that we would like to discuss? Anyone would like to make suggestions or discussions? I think one thing under the division information, the on-time graduation rate is not included there. And I guess we can choose to do that or not, you know. I think our current graduation rate is 86.7. Correct. Is that correct?
On-time graduation.
Right, on-time graduation rate. And that is not included there. Do we choose to insert that at that point? Any discussion on that?
I agree. It should be included.
Need a motion on that? No? Don't need a motion. Okay. Is there a general
6.7.
consensus that we put the on-time graduation rate?
I think so.
Yep.
Anybody
Okay. Yep. 86.7. Any other information in the division items? Under qualifications, as listed there, I would like to go around the group, if that's acceptable, and everybody can give a comment, if they have a comment or something they think should be inserted, or if they think we should move something to required, preferred, or optional, at this point. And I will start with Ms. Jenkins.
With the qualifications, one of the things that stood out, I do feel that the person should live here in the area, Suffolk,
Okay, so you're talking about residency in the
Yes.
school division?
Yeah.
And you think that should be moved to required?
Yes, sorry. So, meaning if someone applies that's not here yet, they should be moving
They'd
here.
have to understand they'd have to move here.
Right, relocate, right. Discussion on that?
That
Anybody?
makes sense because under on the questionnaire, residency in the school division, it fell in the required category. If you look at the joint selection, answers, and the parents had that as number one.
Right,
And I don't know if I can amend what Karen said. Is it necessary, or should we put in there residency required, and if the candidate has school-aged children, they should attend Suffolk Public Schools?
I agree.
I agree with that. I agree with that as well, if they have school-age children.
that could be a good amendment to it.
That's excellent. I agree also.
I think that's an excellent idea, Mr. Mitnick.
Thank you.
You got that, Ms. Chavis? Okay.
One thing that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Would there be discussion then on maybe the time, if a person lives out of this area, on relocating to our district? Should we have something about that? You know, someone may be 500 miles away, and, you know, then they come here, but should they be able to, should we have something concerning the relocation, the time limit, or whatever?
I think we should. I think we need to tie all loose ends. There should be a time frame that the person, upon accepting the position, is required to live in the city. And I think we need to address the issue of whether or not we're going to assist in his or her relocating expenses or not. So that way everything is up front from the beginning and it's no surprises.
I agree.
Any other comments on that?
I don't know, I would think, depending on when we hire somebody, we'd have to think about that. We'd have to give it some thought, because say if we hired somebody in October, if they have school-aged children, school's already started. If they have a home they have to sell, depending on what we offer them in the package that you were referring to, it might be that it might take some time to do that. So I don't know, do we want to say 60 days, 90 days? What do we want to, what did you thought about when you guys thought about it? From the time they accept the position.
Would it be too soon to say within 90 days?
I think 90 days is a fair amount of time.
I was going to say 60, but I can live with 90.
90 days?
I do think that the moving expenses should be saved for the contract.
Okay.
Right, that's right.
90 days, I could live with that.
So we're going to save any discussion of moving expenses to the contract. Is that agreeable? Agreeable?
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. Mr. Mitnick, do you have anything under the qualifications?
Yeah, the first four categories are all positions: the principal, central office, associate, assistant superintendent, superintendent. Are we being redundant, particularly with the central office and the associate and assistant superintendent? It seems like we're saying things more than one time.
Are you saying perhaps just state one, like a central office administrator is preferred as opposed to
isn't an
using
associate superintendent or assistant superintendent a central office
that.
administrator?
That's true.
It is,
It
but
is.
there might be some directors of programs. I think that was why they included that, like if somebody's the director of a program, and in Virginia, you don't have to have a doctorate to have a superintendent's license. So if they are members of the staff who are doing supervisory tasks, I think that might be why they did both of them. But I agree with you, if you put central office administrator, all of them that would be all inclusive of all of them.
Or could we put central office administrator slash, all of those others and just include it in one, general heading?
But
That would be my recommendation, the one that Ms. Byram recommended, because you could have someone that has an experience as a central office administrator, but it's not in a superintendent capacity or an assistant superintendent capacity, and I think that would have some forbearance on their ability to perform their job duties.
I agree.
Consensus on that. Okay, Ms. Mayo, do you have any comments?
Well, one concern that I had has already been addressed about the residency in the school division, so we have covered that. I noticed, too, experience as a principal is required. It has been listed from VSBA. Perhaps we might want to say preferred here, because there may be persons who may have been assistant principals, or depending on where they're coming from, they might have a dean of students, which is a part of an administrative team. And generally now, when you have administrative teams, they work together, the principals, the assistant principals, the dean of students, or however they are organized, just depending. So perhaps we would want to say experience as a principal is preferred, because sometimes folks leave positions of that type and go directly to central office positions as well. So
I'd like to say, if you look under the teachers' results, 71.74% of the teachers said experience as a principal was required, and I really think that our staff is speaking out there, and I would like to see that as kept in there as requirement, because of the teacher speaking out strongly in that area.
It is the only one that came out required amongst all the groups. Parents thought that was important as well. So if we ignore that, I feel like we're not listening to our teachers and to our parents, because it was so strongly recommended that it have experience as a principal. So I would prefer that we not ignore those two voices, in the sense that it was weighted extremely strong. And I think we could keep that one. I would prefer to keep that one as required.
Any other comments on that?
well, it's fine with me, but I was just thinking about that other aspect of it, and we certainly want to listen to our stakeholders and our employees, and that's extremely important.
on us.
Is there a way where we could tie, the same way we just agreed to list the different capacities of central office administrators, could we do the same for principal, where we say principal, an assistant principal is still a principal, you're just an assistant, and some divisions and some localities are structured different, where they may not have an assistant principal, but they may have a dean of students, which sometimes, depending on their structure, you may be doing the same job description. Is it possible that we can just list those three there? That way we're not going against what was voted upon or taken into account from the parents and staff, but we're also giving leeway to divisions who are not set up like ours.
May I just
Equivalent
add-
to a principal?
Well, when Mrs. Mayo was speaking about an administrative team, we have central office administrators, and then we have building level administrators. And having served in both capacities, I'm thinking that the focus of a building level administrator is on their particular school, the focus of a central office administrator is on the whole school system, which is where the superintendent is. But in administrative teams in a school, the assistant principal, and I think in terms of having a person with strengths, the survey also indicated in curriculum and instruction. I'm thinking that if we look at the evaluation of instruction and all those other things that an assistant principal, especially in high school, might be tasked to do, they're doing some of the same tasks. And that's why I thought looking at an administrative team, not just the principal, but the assistant principal as well. In some schools, the principal is more like a manager, and the assistant principal is the instructional leader, or doing much of the instructional leadership, doing much of the day-to-day task, working with teachers, helping them do whatever. And that's why I thought in terms of an administrative team, people who are part of the administrative team in school leadership. I don't know, anybody else have any thoughts? I mean, I'm not wedded to it, but I just think it's a good idea not to exclude if we make it too narrow. If someone went from being a teacher to a department head to a central office person, and they are supervising instruction for the school system, we would exclude them if they became superintendent and they don't have any experience the other way, because we're not requiring that you have experience as a superintendent. I don't know, like I said, I'm not.
I personally like the adding of things and making it required. Like Mr. Riddick mentioned, the dean of students, assistant principal, and make it more of a requirement in that regard.
And I think you're not giving weight to how the survey was worded. I mean, if we had given them all those options in the survey and they could have picked amongst them, then I would be fine with that. But we gave them these options, and I think we should honor that option of being a principal. That's the option we gave them. That's the weight. That was what we gave them. I won't speak to it again, but that's my preference. I feel we should honor that how we gave the survey. And I think they were clear, 71%. It's a very large percent. And whatever context that is, principal to them, that was very important. So I would like to see that word stay. That's how the survey was worded.
I would say, just from the point of survey research, we have over 14,000 students. Is that not correct? 14,265, and we got 742 surveys back. So, as I understood it, when VSBA was here, they spoke in terms of it being a three-pronged decision. The input from the public, the input from us, of course, will make the decision, as well as the input from the surveys. So, when I look at the very small percentage of people who actually returned the survey, even though there was 71%, there was 71% of 700 and some people, not even a full coverage of one of our elementary schools. So, I think in terms of what people do and what they want, and some of the feedback was excellent, I'm not opposed to that. But I think I don't want to close the door to other people who might be qualified because they don't have that experience. They may have gone from an assistant principal. And with regard to the survey, we used VSBA's survey. We didn't create the survey. So the questions that were on the survey were handed to us. We handed it to the public. But they made it clear that that was 1/3 of the decision, not the whole decision.
I have a concern with adding to the term principal. When you think of a principal, if you think of a superintendent and you think of everything that falls under his responsibilities, I don't think of a dean of student having those same experiences or having even the same leadership of a building. And having served as an assistant principal in two different school systems, my role as an assistant principal prepared me to become a principal, but it didn't prepare me to become a superintendent. So, I think that the principalship is a key position. And if we're considering building level, we should go with the word principal.
Let's keep in mind that once upon a time in Suffolk history, Turlington Woods didn't have a principal. It was a dean, a campus dean, but it did the same job functions as the principal who is sitting there now. In light of what Ms. Story suggests, staying true to the survey, I don't see anything wrong with principal, but adding the term assistant principal, because the job of the assistant principal is to assume all duties of a principal in the absence of
the principal.
Of the
It is
principal.
indeed.
And in most cases, from my experience and my evaluations, I see a lot of assistant principals doing the day-to-day work, and the principals operating in the form of a management capacity.
The licensure, actually, the state required licensure is the same. To be an AP, you have to have a license as well. The same license, a principal license. So I don't know that, like I said, I just don't want us to eliminate someone who is qualified that we might want.
Right.
Because
make it too narrow.
Make it too narrow. And then we will exclude anybody who has not ever been the building principal, even though they might have gone from an assistant principal to an assistant superintendent to a superintendent, because you can indeed skip steps. Yeah.
Any other comments on that? Anybody? So, do we want to go with experience as a principal / or making that required? Comments?
My recommendation is still the same recommendation as I did before, that we go experience as a principal, comma, assistant principal, and or dean of students, because every division is not set up the way we're set up. So
That's true.
my fear here is we're going to just attract only those who are set like us.
I think in the survey, it was not, if I remember correctly, it was not stated, the only choice was principal, right?
Right.
Right. If they had had other options there, they might have chosen, to go elsewhere, but, Further discussion on that?
Still stick with the idea of the experience of a building principal and the experience of a building assistant principal is very different. And I would hope that we would expect at least that level of experience.
Well, shouldn't we, if that of what you just stated is accurate, and that's the direction that we're going to move in, shouldn't we also change the wording from experience as a superintendent from preferred to required? Because a principal, just as you stated earlier, it may have difference from the assistant principal and dean of students. That's likewise in relations to a principal, an assistant superintendent, and a superintendent. You may have an experience, and we've seen this before, a person have a good track record as a elementary principal but couldn't deal with high school, or a good track record as an elementary principal and a proficient track record as a high school principal but couldn't be a superintendent.
May we do something, may we call for the vote? Because we haven't come to consensus, so let's call for the vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, call for
Your
the,
motion?
yes,
I make a motion that the qualifications stand as experience as a principal is required.
I second the motion.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
No.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck.
No.
Chairman Byram.
No.
Motion carried, 4-3.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would it be permissible for me to move that we amend the language of that particular, where it's not changing it from being required, but we amend it to experience as a principal, vice principal, or dean of students? Is that permissible to do it that way?
You can't amend that motion because that motion is already
It's already
passed.
passed. You can make
The only
another
thing you can do is make another motion to maybe add something else to the requirement, such as, you could have the requirement of an assistant principal also as a requirement, but what that will end up doing is that then the person would be required to have both experiences,
Right.
that of an assistant principal and that of a principal.
Okay. I'll strike it.
Under the central office administrator, that is going to be included with the list that we said we're going to put slash whatever, right? Is that the agreement on that?
Well, since all of them are preferred, I don't think it matters.
What'd you say?
Since all of them are preferred,
Uh-huh.
I don't know that it's going to matter if we switch and add them together or if we leave it like it is. Anybody have any?
Leaving those as preferred.
To be honest, my recommendation would be that experience as a superintendent then become required.
Okay.
Discussion on that?
I think if you say that the superintendency is a requirement, you're really going to limit who, we have lots of potential superintendents out there, but most superintendents stay where would like to stay where they are. And I think that saying that is a requirement, we are going to limit our candidates.
I just would prefer we have someone who have experience in operating in the position that we're soliciting them for. For an example, Dr. Whitney had experience as one of the superintendents of Suffolk Public Schools, and he was able to step in and do an excellent job because he had experience as an assistant superintendent versus the way it could read now. As long as I have experience as a principal, then I qualify. Everything else is preferred, so I can just be a building level principal, and
Walk into the
that
superintendent's.
would constitute me to qualify for this position that oversees 14,265 students.
Want to make a motion? Or any other discussion?
I'm just thinking, go ahead.
Oh, no, I didn't have anything to say. I'm just curious to see what everyone else has to say.
I just wanted to say, I'm hearing what you're saying, but the bottom line is, if a person, applies for this position, we still look at all the qualifications. It doesn't mean we're going to pick that person because, whether they have superintendent experience or not. So.
The only thing that I would add is this. First of all, we were fortunate in that we got to keep a superintendent for 9 years. As we learned at the workshop we attended, that is not the normal tenure of a superintendent. They're about 2.5 years, period. That's the normal tenure of a superintendent. So there are people who move from place to place. Mr. Riddick is correct on that. The issue, I guess, for me is that because our salary is not tops, we have had the reputation of having the lowest paid one in the region for a school system our size. So I'm thinking that if we limit it, that might it would just limit our applicants, because we have to find a way to market ourselves to make ourselves look like there's a reason you want to take a downgrade if you work in Virginia. And then, of course, the superintendent we choose will have to be eligible for Virginia licensure. So if we get somebody from another state, they have to meet Virginia's qualifications for licensure as well. So, I mean, those are things to look at. If we say a superintendent, I just think we're going to narrow ourselves. We're going to have ourselves at a point. But I understand exactly what you're saying, Mr. Riddick, that if a principal can walk up and just take a principal of a school that has 1,000 kids can walk over and take over 14,000 kids in 14 different schools and some centers, that's a big jump. I'm just thinking that if we do that, we're going to limit ourselves too greatly. We won't have that much to choose from. That's just.
I agree with you, Dr. Buck. I think we should keep it preferred.
Is there a motion to?
I move that we leave it as it is on the descriptors here, to have the associate or assistant superintendent is preferred.
I second it.
Was that motion correctly? Are we talking about associate or assistant superintendent, or are we talking about superintendent?
I think we're talking about all three.
You're not adding assistant superintendent and central office all into one?
We had added that into one. I thought we had said
gonna make it
before we were
slash.
just going to leave it
Leave it
separate. Mhm.
So repeat the motion.
We're talking about
Now, Mr. Riddick was referring to the associate and assistant superintendent, is that correct?
No, the superintendent.
The superintendent, okay. Then I need to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay. If you would withdraw your second, okay. All right, let me restate that. I move that we keep experience as a superintendent is preferred as one of the qualifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram,
Yes.
motion carried.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I believe if we're going to begin the process of voting on each item, we need to go back and vote on whether we're going to include the on-time graduation rate and the other item that we talked about before we initiated the practice of voting on items individually.
Is there a motion on that?
I move that we include the figures of 86.7 for the on-time graduation rate to the announcement for superintendent search job description.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay. All right. Any other items on qualifications that we have not covered? Anyone want to add anything? Mr. Mitnick?
Dr. Brooks-Buck, what does the state requirement say about the doctorate for candidates?
You can have a master's degree and get a superintendent's license. You do not have to have a terminal degree. So we can, since our survey came back and we're trying to stay true to it, it says a doctorate is preferred, but you don't have to have one. And I
Okay.
think if we leave it at preferred, I'm thinking that would be better, because we may find someone who has the skills that we want and the strength and instructional leadership that we desire, who doesn't have the terminal degree yet. I mean, that was my thinking, Mr. Minna.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other?
Did we change the residency one to required? Did we have to vote on that one?
Yes, I think.
Probably do.
And did we add the statement about
Aye.
school-age children?
I have a question about that. I'm not sure that it is lawful to take the right away from anyone as to where their children go. I think we can talk to them at the time and hope that they put their children in, but I'm not sure that you can lawfully demand and take away a parent's right of where they're going to put their children.
Mr. Waller,
So
would you address that?
that would seem to be a parent's right, and making a position hinge on that, is that legal?
It would be something that I would need to look into. It could very well raise a question about interference with parental guidance and rearing of their children. I would ask that you not make that a requirement tonight. And in fact, one of the ways you could go about that is in your interview of the individual, you could simply ask them what they feel about enrolling their child in Suffolk Public Schools. And then your final decision on that candidate, you could very well consider that
Right.
as an option or as one of the elements in your whole discussion, because quite naturally, there will be things that you will consider in your interview process, such as how the person comes across. So you could very well informally weigh that, depending on how they respond to it, but not actually have it in your list of qualifications.
We can have a residency requirement for the superintendent.
Sure, you can have a
But-
residency requirement.
And let me say this, I realized that when we were talking about it, but if someone wants to lead these schools and they want the public to put their children in school, it would seem to be counter to or counterintuitive to say, I want you to trust me with your children, but I don't even trust me with mine. I think, okay, and that's just my 2 cents worth.
I think, let's just say that we hire somebody and they send their children to Nesbitt Suffolk Academy, I would think there would be an uproar in our school system
I think there'd be a problem
from
as
anyone
well.
who attends.
Rightfully so.
I can go along with Mr. Waller and say that we leave that for a discussion and raise that question at the time of interviews.
However,
We need to vote on the residency requirement, don't we?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're leaving the residency requirement.
So we're going to leave residence in the school division is required.
Well, we can make that motion.
We could say if selected. We could say if selected, residency in the school system
System
is required.
Okay.
within
And we
90
need-
days.
We need to, yeah, if they're gonna come whenever they accept the contract, they're gonna have to move.
That would be a contract item as well, the specific number of days.
I'm just, from my research and seeing the additional contracts, sometimes it is listed in the job description, not in negotiation. If selected for this position, residency in the division is required. I know the city of Norfolk does it for the municipal aspect of Norfolk government a great deal, and so does Chesapeake and Virginia Beach. I think that should be something that's up front, so they can make that determination whether to complete the application or not. While I have the mic, I also recommend that for this particular setting here, we look into, I understand we're going to leave that language of if you have school-age children out, but future tense, I would love for us to make that mandated for everything, because how can you lead a division unless you have a buy-in?
But I think at this point, we need to make the motion to make the residency requirement. Is that correct? Am I
Yes.
right?
I'd like to move that one of the qualification requirements be residency in the school division is required.
Second.
Without the 90 days at this point?
I don't want to include that in there.
I think
Not
it
gonna
should
include
be.
that.
I think it should be.
Mr. Wallow, can we get a legal opinion on what you think?
You don't have to include the 90 days in the actual qualifications. I think to simply say, if selected for the position, you will be required to live in the city. And then when you actually sit down and talk with the individual, you give them how much time
They have to
they
move.
have to move, because there may be a number of factors. Putting a house on the market and getting a buyer, it may take longer than 60 days, it may take longer than 90 days.
Right.
And so, to engage them in that conversation and find out from them, how long will it take you to make that move? And then if they give you a time that you find is just totally unreasonable,
And that's not the person.
then you
first.
say to them, no, we're not going to give you that much time. This is how much time we're going to give you to make that move. And then if that day comes and they have not made that move, then you look at maybe terminating their contract.
It's been moved and seconded, right?
Yeah, I think it's been seconded, so we can vote on it.
You seconded?
I did.
So what exactly are we voting on? Because we had
This is
discussion.
the residency requirement.
Is required.
Okay, so we're just
Residency in
moving
the
it from
city of
preferred
Suffolk
to
is
required.
required if you want to leave the city of Suffolk.
Okay.
That's good.
Did I forget to say if selected?
If selected, applicant will be
Okay.
required to live within the city, and you had it as preferred.
We
You wanna
want
make
that
it-
required.
You want it
Required.
We
required.
want that required. That's the,
Required.
and that's I'm seconding,
Mhm.
Mr. Mitnick's motion.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Anything else under that particular section that we have missed or omitted? Okay, moving on to leadership and management skills. Do we want to?
Ms. Byram?
Yes.
Before we start these categories, I would be in favor of them being put into something smoother than the way this comes out. This is just a list of the requirements. I mean, the what was on the survey. It doesn't seem polished to me. Whether we want to spice it up some, or whether we want to give someone the direction to do that. But I notice it's just a matter of listing the categories. And I'm not familiar with other superintendent applications, whether that's the way you do things.
If we're going to go back to being true to the survey, that's where this came from. So,
Right,
They did give it to us to work on.
right. So
Uh,
you would like to see the wording,
I would like to see it smoother than just a collection of topics. And I know that would slow us down considerably if we had to fight over the words. And if the rest of the board would like to just leave it this way, I certainly can agree on that. But as I read through this, it just seems curt to me.
any other comments on that?
my thoughts were that we were just using this as a guide, and that when we get ready to establish questions for the applicants, that's when we'll be more specific with regard to this. And even when we write up the actual job description, we're just discussing these tonight. We can wordsmith it if you'd like to look at that. We can wordsmith it. We can look at the categories, talk about what we want to add, and then we can go back and wordsmith it. Is that reasonable?
Well, it's
to
due
everybody?
tomorrow, that's my question.
I mean, right, but when they'll do it, but now, did they tell you all something different? Will they not allow us to polish it or when it goes out? Because I'm gathering this is what they send when they do it.
Right, what we vote on is what they're gonna use. Yeah, that's what they've said. Yeah.
So how would you, look at the first one, how would you change it?
Off is just being direct to the point. No filler sentences, no buttering up anyone. It's Suffolk Public Schools uncut.
Like I said, if we're trying to stay true to the survey,
It's
this
sort
is
of
what was
lifted
on the
from
survey. If
Yeah.
we're staying true to the survey in one regard, then we need to be consistent and stay true to the survey in the other. This is what the survey said, and we didn't change the survey, so. I don't know, I'm not wedded to either one, so it doesn't, whatever.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is to interpretation. So, I may think that I'm a decisive leader, but other people may not agree with that. And same thing with the creative thinker. It seems very subjective.
It is, but, and I think that's for us to hone out as we interview the candidate. I also think that they use that from the survey of the top 3
Yes.
to 4 choices. I like that it's brief. I understand what you're saying, but I like that it's brief because I think candidates aren't, want to see it concise, and then they're going to fill in the application based on that. So,
Okay, I
yeah,
agree with it.
okay.
I agree with Ms. Story that I think when we do the interview, that is when we will go into those details, This is just an overview.
I like the way it's worded too, the different topics, and then each sentence is very succinct, very to the point, and easy to understand. And then when we do the interviews, then we can delve into it more. Okay.
I think also that, I agree with Ms. Story as well. I think that the person will show us, are you happy about that? Oh, praise the Lord.
I wrote that down, Ms. Story.
I agree that when we ask someone to give examples of being a visionary thinker, when we interview them, they will share with us how they believe they are. We will then evaluate what they wrote.
So there are ways of finding out about that person in each of these categories, because the interview will tell the story.
Right.
Ms.
And when you read the resumes, you'll see
Yeah.
evidence of
That's
one
true.
or maybe not another one. Yeah. I'm going to go back to the qualifications again, under the central office administrator and the assistant superintendent. Are we keeping those as preferred?
That's what we agreed to.
There was no vote taken of that as a separate
We
item
didn't
like you
take
did
a
the
vote.
others.
So will we
We
have a
voted the
motion
other
on
stuff.
that?
You want to make either one of those required, is the question,
Or
I
even,
guess.
you're voting on all of them so far, so you might as well vote on that one also.
Right.
Right.
To clarify exactly what you want.
So a motion, is there a motion on that?
You want to make a motion? Whether we want the central office preferred and the assistant or associate superintendent preferred.
I move that we keep the qualifications as experience as a central office administrator is preferred, and experience as an associate/assistant superintendent is preferred.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick? Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Chairman Byram?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving to personal characteristics. Again, I think that's coming from the survey information gleaning. Are there any questions on that? Comments?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the leadership and management skills section to read: the successful candidate is a team player who is comfortable with shared decision-making, a visionary, creative thinker, and a decisive leader.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins? Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Chairman Byram?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, on personal characteristics, any discussion on that?
Ms. Byram, could I suggest that you just go ahead and read that line so people who are at home aren't looking
Personal
at this?
characteristics.
Right.
This
Yes,
is-
thank you.
The successful candidate is a good listener, accessible, consistent, and caring. Discussion on that?
When you look at the survey on that, I kind of wonder how confident didn't get in there and caring did, just looking at the numbers. And I'd like to suggest that caring be replaced with confident.
Well, if that's consistent, again, with the language of the survey,
Yes,
and
confident
the
is.
results,
confi-
results of the survey, is this supposed to be the top? What we have in our hand is supposed to be the majority, is that correct?
Yeah,
Now, I'm not opposed to adding the word, but I wouldn't take away the word if indeed we're consistent with the survey. We could add the word, I wouldn't take anything away.
but the word caring, confident was
Again, I'm not-
required and preferred by over 70%, where caring was required and preferred by 60%.
Again, I don't know why they weighted what they weighted. We were talking about the weight of those things and what they were. If we're going to be, as we stated in the first place, if we're going to be consistent with the survey, this is what the people gave us to be, and I'm not opposed to adding confident to it. I'm not opposed to adding the word confident, but confident and caring don't mean the same thing. So if we want to add it, I think that's good.
Do you have a motion?
I make a motion that for personal characteristics that it reads: the successful candidate is a good listener, accessible, consistent, caring, and confident.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Chairman Byram?
Yes.
Motion carried.
The next one, Board Superintendent Relations. The successful candidate effectively mediates and accommodates different perspectives, understands differences between policy and administration, and acts accordingly, and provides options and recommendations to board before accepting board directives. Discussion on that one?
Only thing that I think we need to do is change administrator to administration. I think that's a typo.
I
And
think there's a
my
mistake.
recommendation would be we accept it as a word.
Any other?
I'll move that we accept it as worded with that one correction.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Chairman Byram?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Staff relations. The successful candidate creates an atmosphere of trust and mutual respect, maintains open channels of communication to and from staff, and supports staff development activities and encourages professional growth. Discussion?
As in the personal characteristics, as you look at Question number 6 in the summary sets a good example. Was selected by a higher percentage than support staff development, so I would recommend that we add sets a good example for staff members to that category.
Would you like to make that a motion?
I didn't know if there was any discussion.
I concur. I think I noticed that supporting staff development was a little lower, but I think we should just keep it in, and we can add that higher category.
I'd like to make a motion that we add the statement sets a good example for staff members to the staff relations section of the application.
Second.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram,
Yes.
motion carried.
Community relations, the successful candidate effectively advocates school issues and needs, communicates effectively on both private and public levels, and responds to individual concerns in an appropriate manner. Discussion? Questions on that?
It's there, and actively looks to include community, something like that, where in community relations, the superintendent would also actively look to engage the community in school decision-making. So that was to add.
To stay true to the survey, do we want to add promotes business and community involvement in schools?
That would be great, yes.
Since that was one of the survey
That was one of the
items.
survey items.
Make that an emotion.
He will need to amend his motion to include that, and then the other person that gave the second would need to accept the amendment.
So which one of you made the amendment, the motion?
I made the motion.
Okay, you need to amend
Who
it then.
seconded it?
Miss,
Okay.
Oh, who did it? Oh, yeah, I did. I thought you
I'd like to amend the motion to include the statement promotes business and community involvement in schools.
I second the amendment.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram,
Yes.
motion carried.
School finance. The successful candidate lobbies for school funding on behalf of the school division, develops and explains the rationale for the budget to the board and local officials, and offers creative funding solutions. Discussion or question?
Question, I think it covers what we believe that you ought to do. I move that we accept it as written.
I second.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byram,
Yes.
motion carried.
Areas of expertise. The successful candidate has expertise in curriculum and instruction, school reform, strategic planning, total quality management, and budget and finance. Question or concern?
In that category, this was something that I felt that the survey was missing, and that would be strong in school improvement, focusing on student achievement. I felt that the survey slighted that somewhat, and I would like to see a candidate have expertise in school improvement and in having a strategy to focus on student achievement. That, of course, is that's our job, is student achievement. and we have schools that need improvement. And I would like to add that to this one, even though it is not really covered, that I could tell
I think
in the survey, but I would like to consider adding that to it, that they are strong in school improvement and focusing on student achievement. I think that's important for our district.
Comments, questions?
the only thing that I would suggest is that or consider is that's what's covered under curriculum and instruction. And again, strategic planning, total quality management, et cetera, we could add it in that because it would be covered under school reform, school improvement would be covered there. But curriculum and instruction, I would expect that the person who is in charge have strengths in curriculum and instruction, and if they do, then they understand school reform and school improvement. But I would suggest that we add it under where they have EG, for example, that we add it under in that area.
Any others? Any other comments?
I would like to see it added and highlighted instead of just assume that it's included.
I think for our district, that's really important. I would like to, not just added EG. I mean, this is really important for our district. And I would truly like to see them very strong, bringing in some background evidence of school improvement and student achievement. So I would advocate one more time for that.
I don't oppose it, I just said that it's covered in curriculum and instruction, so I'm not averse to it, and wherever we put it, it's fine with me as long as we understand that that's what curriculum and instruction and school reform are all about. So if we want to add that language in there, where would you want it added? You want it highlighted and you want it added, so is there a particular place you want it added?
So I think, Mr. Mitnick, tell me, it would read something like, the successful candidate has expertise in curriculum and instruction, school reform, then we have in parentheses, strategic planning, total quality management, et cetera, parentheses, budget and finance, school improvement, and student achievement. Yes?
Like to make that a motion?
I make that a motion.
I would second that motion.
Board Member Jenkins?
Yes.
Board Member Mayo?
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick?
Yes.
Board Member Riddick?
Yes.
Board Member Story?
Yes?
Vice Chair Brooks Buck?
Yes.
Chairman Byron?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Any items in the previous ones that we need to go back to? Everybody's confident on those? I guess under salary, we're going to leave that for the present. Yep, leave that for the present. All right, are there any other items? Anyone else have any other concerns? Would it be possible for the clerk to go back and review a little bit for us to be sure we all on the same page? Is that appropriate? Yep. Okay.
And these are just,
I know I'm putting you on the spot real quick.
these are just short. There will
Let's
be,
be sure we're all on the same
there will be
page.
sentences or better
Right.
reading.
All
So,
right.
under qualifications, you elected for the residency in the school district to be required. You elected for experience as a principal to be required. Preferred was experience as a central office administrator, experience as an assistant superintendent, experience as superintendent also. You did not address an earned doctorate is preferred.
I think so. I move that an earned doctorate is preferred. It's not
Second.
required, but it's preferred.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Member Mayo,
Yes.
Board Member Mitnick,
Yes.
Board Member Riddick,
Yes.
Board Member Story,
Yes.
Vice Chair Brooks Buck,
Yes.
Chairman Byron,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay.
Chavis, how do you have the residency stated?
If selected, the candidate will be required to will live or either relocate to the city of Suffolk, whichever you prefer. Will be required to live in the city of Suffolk.
I think just to leave it the way it is, except say, if selected, residency in the school division is required. I thought that was what we had decided and voted on.
That was the way you made the motion, that's the way we approved it,
Right,
yes.
that's the way we approved it.
Residency in the school division is, if selected,
required-
residency
If
in.
selected, residency in the school division is required.
That's the way
Yeah,
we did it.
because if we leave it like this, it looks like you already have to live here
Mhm.
to be considered.
Well, again, I was just giving the short version, but the actual motion was if selected.
Absolutely.
Under the different other items, under the leadership section, there were no changes. Under characteristics, and confidence was added after caring. Under the board superintendent relations, correcting the word to administration, otherwise approved as is. Under staff relations, it was added to sets good example for staff members. Community relations was amended to include promotes business and, reading my writing here.
Yeah, but you want to read the,
Yeah,
I've got a word that I can't do. Yeah, community, yeah. Promotes business and community involvement in schools.
yes.
School finance was as is. Area of expertise was added, school improvement and student achievement to the end of that statement. Any other corrections or additions that anyone wants?
All on question.
I don't know if we need this in the qualifications, although I would like to see it. I think one of our needs is that they bring experience to the table in CTE and to be able to grow our technology center. I think that's a need of the district, and maybe that's something that we can mention if they have experience in developing technology and our career pathways that we have out at CCAP. I think that those pathways, academic pathways, are very important. And I noticed that there isn't anything here that really addresses if they have experience and they've done well in growing and developing those vocational pathways. I think that would bring a lot to the table for Suffolk. And so it was just a void that I thought would be important for our district if they brought that particular area of expertise, or they had developed a nice vocational technology and vocational center, that would be just something that would really fit right now a niche that we have or a need. So I wanted to bring that to the table. No, preferred. I don't know that it's required, but I think that preference addresses right now a particular area of our district that I yearn to see grow and develop, and fits our, some of our kids that, a great pathway to great jobs. So I would like to see that in in the area of a preferred qualification.
Wouldn't that falls under area of expertise when it says successful candidate has experience in curriculum and instruction and school reform?
Yes.
Because we already have the program, it's the matter of reformation to get it to where we can see. Don't get it twisted. We have a good program in place now, and I think it's over time you can see better results forthcoming as the program continues to grow. But I think we don't need to add that additional language. It's already stated. It may not be in an explicit form, but it's already there. Because
And
that's the same thing for
I
special
think
ed.
also, that will come out in the interview process a lot too. Questions concerning that, which would cover it. And I think it could be included right there in that area of expertise. I think it's, it's not spelled out, but it's mentioned. Yeah.
And-
Any other?
It could be put in the areas of expertise, and that way it would be addressed.
I'm thinking also that if we, I guess I'm not thinking as specific for a superintendent who's over all programs. The superintendent alone is not going to develop a CTE program or a technology program or whatever. He's going to do that with staff and lead a staff that's competent in doing that kind of thing. The only reason that I wouldn't put it under qualifications is because we have said if you've been a building principal who has not done that, then that's a part of what is required as a qualification, and you haven't necessarily done that. So you have to be a building principal, you have to be, or whatever, and you come forward if you have not developed a program, if the program was, as Mr. Riddick said, already established, or you really didn't develop it or do anything with it. I don't know, but I would agree that it would go under under curriculum and instruction, because then we could ferret out all of the different areas under curriculum and instruction. So if we were to add CTE, it would be in that area, not in the qualifications area.
My recommendation is to leave CTE out altogether. It's implied here in area of expertise. If we're going to add CTE, then we also need to come back and add special education as well.
Absolutely.
Because I think special education demands our immediate attention. CTE is progressing in the right direction. Our special education area could use some work.
And see, all of that would be under curriculum and instruction. That's what I was thinking in the broad sense, but what do we want to?
We don't want to get too specific because curriculum and instruction covers a wide range of topics, and I think that we would be fine if we did not put that in those qualifications.
I agree.
Other comments?
I just hope that when we get the candidates to interview or look at, we won't just look at the piece of paper, that we can go somewhere and research them and verify everything that they're saying about themselves, because anybody can put anything on paper or in a paper. It doesn't mean that it's true.
Well, the VSBA, the applicants are screened.
Right.
And they
And that's what I'm saying.
carefully look at all of that.
All that to make sure, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And also what Mrs. Mayo was saying, that when we interview the applicants, we can find out specifically what they did. We
Right,
can make sure we
exactly.
include those in the interview questions that we provide, those areas of expertise, because I would agree that special education is one of those areas, and of course I have a bias
Absolutely.
there, is
Me
one
too.
of those areas that, and when we talk about curriculum and instruction, I would expect that. I would expect early childhood education to be a part of that. All of the areas that we discuss would be a part of curriculum and instruction, and strategic planning with regard to where we're going with that. I would think our dual degree programs, our governor's school, all of the things that we work with, rather than ferret them out separately, we'd be asking questions about those and expecting input on those.
I
And-
agree.
And Ms. Story, you have an excellent idea there. And so when we compile questions, that's going to be one of your questions probably, right? And
Yes,
mine too. Yeah,
right.
because that is very vital.
It is.
Yes, special education as well. We know which ones, that would be the key ones.
I'd like to thank everyone for the spirit of cooperation in putting this together this evening.
What'd you say, Mr. Mitnick?
I said I'd like to thank everyone for the spirit of cooperation in putting the document together this evening.
Thank you for that. Anyone else have comments?
We had some excellent information and input from the public through those surveys, and we were very pleased with the results of the surveys. And of course, that information will certainly be an asset as we move forward with the interviews to select our next leader for Suffolk Public Schools.
Ms. Jenkins, you have anything?
I'm excited for what's to come, and I believe that we are all capable to pick the right one for the job, and we're all working together as we should be.
Well, let me get my notes out. I'm just playing. This experience has been a rewarding one. Over the past couple of days, I had the opportunity to go out in my borough and some other areas of the city to conduct this survey and get the message out. And I can tell you that we have a group of people who want to be involved, and they're just looking for directions on how to be involved. I think this is an opportunity for us to keep this momentum going. We heard from 754, if my memory is correct, of persons who weighed in on this survey. I think we need the council and the city manager's office, in addition to us, to work together. Just to piggyback off of what Mr. Mitnick said earlier, it's a cake. You have different ingredients coming together, and at times it's going to look messy, it's going to look yucky. Don't let the current stage of perception taint your viewpoint of what's really going on behind scenes. We are a group of 7 individuals from 7 different backgrounds with 7 different experience sets coming together for the common good of moving Suffolk forward in the right direction. And you're going to see some bumps, but we're going to get there. And like Ms. Jenkins said, we are capable of hiring and selecting a great candidate for the superintendent's position. And I just encourage all Suffolkians to continue to hold us as your elected officials to what we ran for. Thank you.
Ms. Story?
It was a good evening. No, I have no other comments. Thank you.
Dr. Buck?
I think we worked well together, and I hope that what actually happened will be reported. I look forward to reading the next article about working together to do this.
Ditto on many of those things. I think we've come a long way. And I think most of us, as I mentioned first when I started, this book, this survey information is quite informative. And whoever the lucky person is to be superintendent needs to read that thoroughly, because it's very insightful information that could be used to move us even to greater heights in the city of Suffolk in education. And so if there are no other comments, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
I meant to mention to y'all that